You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the June 17th, 2024 meeting of the Long Beach Advisory Plan Commission. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Welcome to the Advisory Plan Commission meeting, June 17th, 2024. I would like to call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. If we could do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll do roll call in a minute. I just will mention that Matt Carstrand is not here, and given the Pledge of Allegiance, he is attending his son's boot camp graduation. So congratulations. Diana, would you like to do roll call?
Certainly. Kendra Bartlett here. Jim Davis here. Anna Holt here. Sutton McCormick here. Nina Richards
Here. And we should add Chris Willoughby to our list.
Yes, so Chris Willoughby.
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 20th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
Thank you. We have old business. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. Approve. Everyone approves. How do I say that? All in favor. Thank you. All in favor.
Aye.
Thank you. How about that vote? Old business. We talked last month about everybody looking at the comprehensive plan. And I just wanted to bring up that I had a couple emails back and forth with Paul Lippens, who was the attorney with McKenna, who did the survey in 2016. And one of the things we talked about was whether they could do it, an initial step of just doing it piecemeal, looking at the survey that was done. And whether he could help us, McKenna could help us with that at an hourly rate. He said, certainly they could. In our own comprehensive plan on number 10, under planning and zoning, one of our things was to review the comprehensive plan every 5 years to respond to changing conditions and priorities. And clearly we're behind that. That was one of his issues. He also said an updated survey, there are a lot of the a la carte method could work, but we're not sure how we would do it. And I will tell you that I am not an expert in the comprehensive plan. I've looked at it a few times. And it just seems that the value of working with McKenna, again, is that they're familiar. He did take the time to look at the comprehensive plan. He said if it served well, it could be updated without reinventing the wheel, which is, I think, what we're looking for. He said the value of working with them is they will approach the work and there will be a timeline set and they will work with APC and town council to figure out the different ways that we have to go about it, including updating the survey, getting the survey out. They had a couple of meetings. So what I asked him to do was give us a proposal. Budget and Finances meeting with department heads next week. And I asked him if he would prepare a proposal for McKenna to update, to take all the steps that they took as well to let us know what would have to be done. And, you know, I was it was nice to hear that, you know, if it served as well, it could be updated again without taking huge steps like they did before. So I would like to discuss that, but it seems to me that, again, I am not, I've looked at it. I don't know how I would go about making any changes, how I would go about revisiting task 1 through 10 and making them, flipping them on their sides. So I'd like to hear from the members of the APC and see what you think.
Sure. I mean, I did spend time with the comprehensive plan. I don't think there's any harm with getting a proposal from McKenna. I'd like to see what the cost and scope of that proposal would be, and then we can make a determination of whether or not moving forward with it is necessary. I think that if it's cost prohibitive, that we should, pool our own resources and try to do some of this ourselves and ask for them on an allocated basis for help. But again, we'd have to just see what that looks like and then see what, the town finances look like and have the town council make a decision about what they want to spend their resources there. I think in terms of looking at, just reading the comprehensive plan itself, it sets forth like the objectives, and then the objectives are based on, are developed through policies that are developed by the town. I think there's certain things that I think if you go through the objectives themselves, I think, if you look at the first objective related to land use and development, we probably met those objectives. If you look at B related to public ways, public places, public lands, and public structures, we didn't even try to address things like non-motorized transportation. C, in terms of public utilities and services, we completely abandoned a plan related to sewers. I think that's something like sewers or something like, use of public utilities. I think that it would be incredibly valued to determine public interest and like a global, like what is the global appetite for, bonding, government funding, grants, things like that for a wholesale, like the full town use of sewers. That's I'm personally interested in, but I'm also not going to like start pushing towards a town policy or objective of that without like a majority of the town being behind it. But I think those are things that, and I realized that the sewer issue was a major hot button issue, but I also think it was the approach to the sewer issue that was causing it to be a major hot button issue. So I think that, getting kind of feedback like that, I think that's something that we need to determine based on town feedback, what those objectives are going to be. One thing that I don't think is addressed in here that I would like to see us ask the town about are other objectives like economic development, especially with kind of like the town center. And then other businesses. There's spots within Long Beach where, you could have small businesses and businesses could run, and it could be members of the town or it could be people, outside the town who come and want to operate businesses within the town and provide services to people here. We've had some people pop up businesses over the past years, and we've had some who have been well established, but I think that there's a lot more that we could do over the course of the next 5 years that would really help develop people who want to run small businesses within the town, and it can be a good tax base for ourselves here. So I think that would be a good potential objective or policy for us to start developing and to reach out to the town about to see if they have interest in creating that and including that in the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Kendra?
Yeah, I agree with Seth. I identified 16 areas that need to be looked at, but really I think they can be done by survey. So without knowing what the cost is for just the survey or a full kit and caboodle, we can't really make a determination how much work we need to put into it, how much we want to source out or outsource, I should say.
What are the 16 areas you identified? Do you care? Only if you want.
Yeah.
if you want to spend the time.
So the first one was page 5, which some of them are totally just little things. So like, is it page 5? Yeah, so like, the development of a bicycle pedestrian plan will be explored, so, but what you said, the non-motorized gravel. So that one, page 6 was update things like the pump houses isn't in existence anymore. Same thing about motorized, because it says a town-wide wayfinding system will help define routes and guide pedestrians and cyclists and community destinations. Some stuff, same thing about public utilities and services. The sewer things, like pretty much everything you probably said, I just labeled the pages.
That's, yeah, that's.
You know, page 7 is exploring a partnership with neighboring jurisdictions to provide necessary public services to improve service levels and reduce costs. I mean, I don't think that's applicable to us.
I think it is actually, because the Long Beach Volunteer Fire Department talks quite frequently about mutual aid, that they provide mutual aid and that other towns then provide mutual aid to us. That's how I looked at that one.
Then, let's see, most of the stuff that is in, where it mentions where it mentions, respondents, like how old they are, that type of thing, that would be the thing, certain, definitely would just update itself with the survey, so, we get updates on ages, kids in the home, not kids, you know, that type of thing. So that was like 13,
Yeah, I think it's gonna change dress.
Page 19, there's, you know, one of the things was to improve the pump house and the community park, so there's no pump house, so that kind of thing can go, I guess a lot of it's just it's people answering the survey and then updating the things that come out of the survey. Like, I guess, you know, if we do a new survey, then it's gonna mention, we need to update the pump house because they're in there. So some of that stuff will take care of itself. A lot of the stuff's about the sewers, I think at page 28, just to get a new feel for how would you rate the town's efforts to protect the following natural resources, you know, again, just update what people think about wetlands, lakefront areas, beach stops, open spaces, wetlands. Does some stuff about trash cans at the stops, which have been removed years ago, so a lot of it. I did think page 31 is a big Pandora's box. What's your opinion on the enforcement of codes and ordinances in the town? I mean, we could ask it for sure, but it's just such a general question. I mean, there's so many different codes and ordinances. Obviously, be people that have had a building issue are gonna have, and people that have not had to have it, you know, it's just, I don't really know what. I think we're gonna ask that question. You need to be really specific, like the speed limit or golf cart things, or are we talking BZA things, or are we talking simple rules like firework ordinance?
Yeah, I mean.
You get mad because you had fireworks one night, like that just needs to be tightened up. I had a lot of stuff on planning and zoning, but again, so I guess that's like page 34, again, a lot of it just it's the output from when people answer the question. And like page 37, I think it's the population. So that, as I said, that's that component of people answering it. Get the age and gender updated with the town.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with that assessment. I also keep in mind that when you're talking to the guy from McKenna, like we own that work, like we pay for it, like his job is to market himself to you to make sure that you hire him.
Right.
But like the work that we pay for is ours. So the fact that maybe it's been lost on the shelf and we don't have a copy of it, like, he should be required to give us that file.
I don't know that he wouldn't. I don't look at it as that he wouldn't.
So-
What I look at, who is going to, and of course his job, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my
And so-
background, that's his job, but is he doing a hard sell on me? No, you know, but what he's saying is that certainly I, you know, whether you and Kendra, maybe Jim, we'll let you talk in a second, but Am I going to, type up this survey? Am I going to mail the survey? Who's going to handle who's gonna do the graphics? Who's gonna do, so I'm just telling you that I had a conversation with them and
Yeah, totally.
that's where we are with the
Yeah.
proposal.
Okay.
So Jim?
So with regard to some of the issues that were. Some of them maybe not have been sewer situation, basically, we don't have cooperation with an outside entity. And we have a very long mansion to bring sewer to the rest of the town. I haven't been part of that, that's certainly back very much. So that's not something that's known any of my people, I think, be interested in paying for again. But ultimately, that has to be something that the council, you should the council, the town needs to address. Determine, this is something we can actually even talk about without having the answers to be able to pull up. One of the items that I think is an ongoing concern if you drive around in town is road access. So we have fire, we have electric fire, we have dogs, we have some people who think that they should drive spawn and not road. And that's a concern. And one of the something is to get the fire flying through stop signs. And we don't know, I think believe they have the right to do that. And maybe they do, but my big truck, always stop like that. So that needs to maybe be addressed to the user. Lakeshore Drive is really property that people that use service that footage should be so the street or another. So I don't know that. And I guess the street department take a look at that. So, but in terms of the direction of our town, I think most people are pretty happy with most of what's going on most of the time. And so people don't really care one way or the other. So that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Diana?
I tend to feel a lot like you do, that I don't feel qualified to take information and put together a plan by myself. I think our first step is definitely to get a proposal from the town. I think that's imperative. We need to know what we're talking about. And like Seth said, if it turns out to be cost prohibitive, then what's plan B? But I think looking at what they say, look at their proposal, see if we need to tweak, what we're asking them to do, get it to the correct people to get it in line with the budget. This is something we're going to do on a regular basis every 5 years. I suggest that we're going to do it, then it needs to be an ongoing budget item, and we need a plan for it instead of looking at it now, whatever, 10 years down the line, and go, oops. And so, but that's where I would be. I think obviously it's not on fire. We're not going to fix this next month, but I should like to see the proposals.
And that would also, again, the budget item, when I mentioned budget and finances, starting to meet with department heads, the proposal from McKenna will also be helpful, because I think it needs to be a line item where, if our own comprehensive plan says we should update it or look at it every 5 years, then we have to be prepared to pay somebody or something to do that, so. Mr. Willoughby, do you have any comments, or you're just there to listen?
Just here to listen.
All right. So we will then just leave it that I will get the proposal, I'll send it out. I don't know if anyone has any other comments on, other than we look at the proposal and what plan B might be. Seth and Kendra, you're thinking this is something,
Yeah, well, I mean, the plan, I mean, the comprehensive plan does discuss the, like the creation of like of a comprehensive plan subcommittee within, and I'm assuming that's within the APC or maybe appointed by town council. I assume that will be some sort of makeup of APC members, perhaps a town council member, and hopefully members of the community. We should start thinking about who might be a good fit for that, and maybe that's feedback from McKenna as well. And maybe we think about able-bodied people, both from a technology perspective and from a social perspective, who can get buy-in from people to participate in the getting town feedback. That way we can get as comprehensive, public input as possible when the time comes.
so right now our technology, it just came up at the recent council meeting, our technology is Paul Walzak, who is serving on the park board, so he's done some work reviewing things, and we talked about having again an IT or some kind of committee. It was kind of crickets, so not that we can't look into it.
Well, I mean, I don't think you need like an IT person to create a survey monkey. I mean, you could probably get a teenager to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that. It just, I guess what I'm thinking is whatever I might do certainly is not going to look like this.
Well, that's not, I mean, this is the output. We're talking about gathering the information.
Okay,
And I think that's gonna be the time consuming, and that's gonna be the real work, right? Figuring out what we're gonna ask, how we're gonna ask it, why we're gonna ask it. And then, you can hire a graphic design company to give it out once you have more information.
And I don't know if they often do it, but you might want to reach out to the proper department at Purdue or Ball State, where a lot of planners tend to graduate, and see if somebody needs a project and can help you out and lend a hand that way. And somebody who has a connection there that maybe it's mutually beneficial, where you get some free work and they get some credit for a project.
I mean, yeah, there could be some like class credit opportunities or things like that for undergrad or even graduate level people who wanna help.
okay. I'll be happy to get the proposal, and I will also, I'll talk to you just briefly after the meeting about exactly what I'd be looking for at Purdue and Ball State.
And
I think I could probably check the county and city planner for Michigan City, and then give you some suggestions, especially if they still have connections there. Both of them have graduated from state schools here, so.
Okay, thank you.
we can all help them to delegate.
I like to delegate. Does anyone volunteer other than Chris?
Yeah, I can call the people in Purdue once we figure out who they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll figure that out. So you're in charge of Purdue. Once I figure out what that is. All right, thank you. I think we're done with that then. We'll move on. So our other old businesses review of Long Beach Town Ordinance 154.020 structure and subsurface structure definitions. We had this on last month, and Chris, you wrote up a change in the ordinance. We had talked about specifically, it was the area of sprinklers and septics. So,
Yeah, so really it's just intended, it's not as if you've had a lot of advance notice. It's not a very comprehensive or in-depth ordinance. Unfortunately, the process is pretty involved to make a simple change. One of those changes is already made for us at the state level. So any reference to a substructure being a septic system is just simply invalid. So the net effect of that is a net nothing if we do anything.
are you aware of that? I think we talked about that at the meeting last month or at council. Can you just
So there was an issue, and it's been coming up a little bit more frequently before the building commission, some concerns about normal setback requirements and then placements of septic systems. So as part of some of these changes, and then sprinkler systems, some of them, it seems that have just been installed. And then I think a general feeling of the building commission in general, and then discussion amongst the planning commission was, well, sprinklers really should be closer to the perimeter and not necessarily subject to all of the setback requirements that push them out further. So trying to use some common sense. So my charge was to look into the septic issue, did some research, consulted with LaPorte County's health department director, and learned that really doesn't matter what we have because they're allowed within 5 feet of the property lines and then 50 feet of the body of water. That was some of the conversation we're having at the beginning here. So really, we're just trying to make sure that this code reconciles, update this to allow the flexibility for sprinkler installation, makes the building commission's life a little easier and cleared up that question. It has also sparked a little bit of conversation Nita and I were discussing before this, and I've put this before the building commission, is if we're gonna go through this process. And so mind you, because it's a zoning code matter, we have to go through and set a public hearing, publish notice, have a public hearing before this board, you vote yay, nay, make a favorable recommendation, unfavorable recommendation, then it goes to the council. If it comes initiated from this body, which is where we are. It could also initiate from the town council to you, then it goes before them for consideration. So there's time involved. So one of the things I put before the building commission is, hey, since we're doing this, and last Friday, we had a lengthy discussion about the definition of the front of a house and how do you determine that? It really isn't right line in our code. By votes found over the weekend, there's some discussion reference to the shorter frontage if you're a corner lot. So part of the goal is to try to write as much as we can in English so that's easily ascertainable, right? And so one of the questions, so this is before you to make those simple changes. Then the issue becomes, should we move forward with this now, meaning you, or should we give the building commission the opportunity to go through some of these definitions, like for instance, front of the house, and define that clearly so that we don't have some of these issues? You're certainly entitled to move forward, make any suggested changes, because this form of ordinance that's before you, again, if you were inclined, you'd set it, make a vote to set it for a public hearing, and then I'll do my thing in terms of publication and make sure that it's ready and to pass along to the town council.
Okay, can you now describe to me what the change at the state level was? It was.
Yeah, I'll send it. There's a little more comprehensive email and a chart that shows, but yeah, essentially what it says is that they determine that the state sets what the setback requirements are. And you can't make anything that's more restrictive. And if it is more restrictive, it's invalid. That's summarizing it. So, the state is looking at it, hasn't happened yet, but I believe there's some discussion about even taking the septic determination and permitting away and putting it on the towns, which would create probably chaos because nobody's an expert, right, in the state. So that's it in a nutshell, Seth, but
Okay, but that's a setback requirement for like a property line engine. Okay.
yes, so yeah, it's up to 5 feet. That septic systems could be within 5 feet of the property line.
Is that for structures in general or is that for specific septic?
Yes, yeah, this is only the septic, and the reason that became an issue is because the definition of subsurface structure included septic systems and sprinklers. So then we were looking at, all right, how does that reconcile with our current setback requirements and the same property where we had an issue of defining where the front is of the property also potentially was violating or would have needed a variance. They didn't do anything wrong, but they would have needed a variance for placement, but they get to put it up to 5 feet, and the county really has sole, and or state has the sole discretion.
Well, do you know that provision off the top of your head?
I'll send it, not off the top of my head, but I have an email. I'll send it to you before I leave.
Okay, awesome.
That's within 5 feet of property line.
Yes.
So,
And then on the lakeward, sorry, just to clarify, then there's also some parameters of how close, and the closest of which, for instance, a Presby system, and it's been done, can be 50 feet from the water source, and then there's the property line, that 5 foot setback. So there's a table, and I'll resend that to the extent it got lost in the shuffle. But, the state determines that, so it really doesn't matter. There is an avenue where the town could try to make things more restrictive, but you have to go through process before this board and been advised by our local representative who's, I think, in terms of, well, I don't want to label her as being conservative, but her approach would probably be less allowing whatever needs to be done, but to try to take, environment, not that others don't, but I think in her experience, it's very slim to none chance that anything would get approved that would allow you to be more strict. And we even joked and used Lake Michigan as the example that if potential pollution of that water source isn't serious enough, then what the heck is? But again, it'd be my whole point in saying that is even though there is a provision in the state code that would allow the town to try to go through that process, it's not very likely that the town could to make it more stringent than the state codes.
And it would be the town that have to live with that process.
Pardon?
It would be the town.
Yes.
Would have to go through the process to make its own ordinance more restrictive.
And then seek that approval, at the state level.
Okay.
Yeah, again, it could be done, meaning you could go through that process.
So one more process question, I guess. So if we, as the APC, were to approve this tonight, does that prohibit the building commission then from looking further into the issue of the front of the house?
No,
Or
and so what you'd be doing, the only thing you could do tonight is say, all right, we're okay with this ordinance and we'd like to set it for public hearing at our next meeting. It doesn't stop them from doing it, but when we give a notice, this is if you would ask, from a process and a cost effectiveness standpoint, there is nothing in this ordinance that there's a rush. Because the septic system is already an invalid provision, so the building commission is clear on their chart. The sprinkler systems, I think that definition may be surprised, and sprinkler systems are getting installed already. And not that they want to approve illegal ones, but in my mind, if we're gonna go through the process and you're gonna spend the money and the time, we should try to do it all.
And so since I didn't see that email or whatever, it sounds like the building commission still is looking into that front of the house thing and may need a little more time to tighten up.
And they may say not, but it'll be within the next month. And
Yeah, okay.
Your dad, for instance, or Pete, however we want to refer to them, he did some research over the weekend, right? And it proved fruitful so that I think at least it initiates, they may decide, hey, we're not going to do any. So if you decided to hold off, I don't think that the town's at a disadvantage, and it gives us the flexibility to not have to have 2 public hearings and 2 publications and.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I didn't circulate it because I'm always afraid of making sure we're not violating the sunshine laws. Because I have different language that now I'm not going to say out loud because it's obviously just moot, based on the change of the law. And so I want to read this article and I want to spend time before I make a decision on this. So, I mean, this just seems like too simple fix. I hope it's a simple fix. I really do. But I personally would like to spend more time with something this substantial, before we just kind of rip fire to a public hearing, but that's just my.
And as we sit here, I just want to point everybody I sent an email on May 23rd. And that laid out the requirements for residential on-site sewer systems under the Indiana code. And the ordinance that goes along with that, and then separation distances under the Indiana rules. I'll resend that just to make sure everybody has it and didn't get hung up somewhere. And that has the subsurface where it reconciles with what we're doing in this proposed change.
So it sounds like, what we want to do is, I don't think we want to table it. We just want to push it back until next month, and we'll see what happens at the next building commission, which takes place before our next month's APC meeting. And that'll give everybody a chance to look at what Chris sent out.
And Chris, will you have time, if there's like substantive changes or they come up with something like incredibly important, will it be time between the next building commission meeting and the APC meeting for you to?
Yeah, I'm hoping that I will, Luke, what I will do is that email, that I sent to them today. I will try to resend it, include all of you, because I do think it's important, and we try, and I think Meg Collins tries too, because there's a lot of overlap in the BZA, to include everybody so that there's input, right? There may be things that come up before the BZA, then it opens it up a little bit more that says, hey, if we could have any changes in the next couple of weeks, for instance.
Okay. I mean, because the last thing I want to do is, waste everybody's time, like, doing stuff, like, if, well, I'm not in the loop on, we're not in the loop, yes, if there's something wrong, just, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of planning. Or if I shouldn't.
We don't want you to.
Yeah.
No,
You've got things to do. All right, thank you. And next month, then Chris, you will send us build information. We already have your email. You'll resend it. Diane, it's yours. That is the end of old business, and we have new business. I sent to you existing parking ordinances, 72.04, 72.13, and 154.113.
Before you start,
Oh, yeah.
here's another good example that if you're inclined to make any changes, these are under the zoning ordinance, a lot of them. So this is another example, you can take advantage and have a public hearing for different matters, but all the same publication. So again, trying to make it cost effective so that we're not doing a public hearing every other month and adding process.
So there could be a trio of
Well,
public hearings for now. Do you need copies or you're just looking at those,
and this is my copy.
Yeah.
you have a copy there?
Do you need a copy? Yes. Here, I'll give you mine.
And then I can, I'm just not gonna use the chicken sauce, so those are the things that stay in this is one just combine small piece.
Thank you.
Okay.
So again, there are three that are, they're current, and then, we have a resident who proposed, a change to the different ordinances. Based on an issue that, the resident was having with vehicles, parked on his street, and, at the last council meeting, it was, I think it was mentioned at the council meeting, and I did ask Chief Swistek about complaints about these particular ordinances and complaints about trucks, and he said that this one particular was, something that he went and talked to the homeowner on. And the truck, which I think was, I think it's called a 4-wheel truck, there were 4 wheels in the back, and the truck was moved. It was a home that was being rented out, and, again, Chief Swistek didn't look at it as a problem, but, any resident has a right to complain and to say what they would like to see happen. I just think the change would be very restrictive in my mind, and this is just my opinion, where is, almost the second to last or third to last paragraph. I just look at it as a shared taxi. I mean, there's so many Lyfts and Ubers. I look at it, who's gonna buy an auto rickshaw? What's a what are all these things? Why can't, if my daughter wanted to buy a hearse because she, was a carpenter and needed something big for some lumber or something, and then I can't put that in my driveway. So my feeling just is that they seem to be working. I know that talking to Chief Swistek, the police department, they don't have any, numerous complaints. So I will send it your way.
Yeah, I'll jump in. First of all, to clarify, the resident who Anita spoke with is also on the building commission. So this isn't just like somebody just kind of haphazardly went into the ordinances like, oh, I think I'd like to see this because this is a personal issue. So this was well thought out stuff. And it wasn't one truck, it was 3 trucks, and the trucks were, again, I agree, I don't know what you call it, 4 wheels. So the trucks probably had 1, 2, 3, 6 wheels on them, and there was 3 of them for 6 months. So Anita, you said 1 truck and it was immediately moved. That is not at all correct. And there were other residents on the street that complained. I was there once when another neighbor was kind of yelling at these people because the issue going back, I think Jim, you mentioned it last month. What's happening is a lot of people are wanting to like rent out their homes now because it's a desirable area. And of course you can, we have the long-term rental policy, but there's people that are renting out homes for a month and then subleasing them to friends and family or whatever. So they'll sign a lease for a month and then 20 people will be in and out of that house in a month, but the one name is on, like Seth McCormick signed the lease, but I gave him $250 for Monday to Wednesday. Jim Diener gave him $250 from Wednesday to Friday. So this particular house went on for six months, and 3 different huge trucks were parked there, and they would usually come around 2 a.m. because they were working at the, well, there was a group working at a railroad, we believe in somewhere, and then an Amazon facility in New Carlisle, something like that. So multiple people would come every night at all hours, depending on their shift, and it was literally a bunkhouse. So the fact that just because, Anita, you go to Chief Swistek and he says he doesn't think it's a problem, it is a problem. And this resident, who's also on the building commission, was upset. And I think this is all very valid because, I don't know, things like rickshaws, that was in the existing ordinance, so that wasn't put in there. So anything, this is just saying, we don't want flatbed trucks, commercial vehicles parked at someone's house. Like, there's 2 issues there. They were renting illegally, so that's kind of another issue, but the reason it was noticed that they were renting illegally was because the enormous activity around either midnight or 2 a.m. when 3 different trucks of about 6 people would pull up and get out, slam doors, go in. The big trucks are loud, they pull out, they hung over the street, so they were parking, and you know, a lot of our roadways aren't fully easy accessible where you can get 2 cars going in each direction. You'd have to scoot over, go down the street and wind around them. So these parking restrictions aren't overly strict. I mean, they're not overly strict in my opinion. It's just making sure commercial vehicles are not parked, which I wouldn't want a commercial vehicle, rightfully so, to look out every day at out my window, whether it's from a long-term renter or from a resident.
I understand what you're saying, and my concern about the ordinance, and I could be totally wrong, but as I'm reading this, I think back to a situation where, for instance, I owned a company where we had service vans that were marked with the company's name. All the employees took them home because they were on call 24/7. And if I am reading this correctly, I couldn't park that in my driveway.
Correct.
Which is, in my opinion, that's overly restricted. It's for the Econoline van that has the company name on it, and if I have to bring it home, where am I going to park?
Well, I'm looking at it, and we can certainly add that. I wouldn't have a problem with that. If you are a resident, it'd be a simple fix. Go sign, just tell chief that this is my personal vehicle and and it's within, you know, it's not a huge 6-wheel truck. It is just a minivan type thing, like you said, and they get a special permit and that's fine. This isn't meant to be like, oh, okay, like if Jim had an insurance thing on his car, that wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't be opposed to adding that, like, unless you are a resident and you just get a permit that never expires so that your neighbors know, and if they don't have a problem with it, I don't even know if that's, like, the neighbors wouldn't have to chime in, but I'm just saying, I don't have a problem with that. This does not speak to, I mean, you can sit here and nitpick, well, what about this? What about that? What if one person has a logo on their car. That's not what this is talking about. So something like that could be added in there. If you have a small minivan type of a vehicle, not a huge commercial vehicle, an actual residential vehicle that you have a decal logo on, that's not what this is talking about. But if it is a big six-wheel truck or one of those almost like little small semi trucks, I shouldn't know what these trucks are called. I would have a problem with that. I would not want to look at that outside my house every day with a logo on it, like I'm just thinking like the QCC rug company, like that's a big commercial vehicle. If someone lived in Long Beach and they owned that company, I would not be okay with them parking that in the driveway every night. But I would be fine with a minivan that had a logo of State Farm Insurance on it, if that was your thing. But again, that's not what this ordinance is talking about.
Jim, thoughts?
Most of us have pretty good idea what a commercial vehicle is. I can tell you from past experience, in Palm Beach, Florida, all commercial vehicles have to leave that island by 6 p.m. every night. It doesn't matter if you own a fleet of trucks, it doesn't matter who you are, they have to be off the island. So, you know, this is Long Beach, not Palm Beach, but this is basically a residential community. We have very little commercial property in this town. And it's limited to really what we see around us here. So this existing ordinance, as I read it, is pretty straightforward in that, you know, trucks, vans, you know, anything other than cars, utility, you know, sports utility vehicles, even a pickup truck, maybe a delivery van. Anything else would be prohibited from being here after a certain period of time. And I don't know if most residents have a problem with that at all. The streets that we do have, particularly what I would call old Long Beach, you've got very narrow streets. So. That's my thought.
Thank you. Seth?
I don't know much about Palm Beach, but I mean, every suburb in the United States has some form of this ordinance. And they seem to be able to handle it pretty well. I mean, you can tell if somebody's running, you know, a food truck business out of their house, or if they're parking their tractor trailer there versus if they're having a State Farm vehicle. It sounds to me like this was more of this specific issue where this sounds like this issue sprang was an enforcement issue as opposed to a code issue. But if it was a code issue, then I think we should probably address it because I think it's a very real concern. Okay, so if it was a code issue, but then, I mean, what specifically was wrong with the current code? Is it that we weren't describing it appropriately? Because I just don't see a drastic difference in what, and of course, I'm kind of just looking at this kind of over your shoulder, right? And I apologize that, and this is the second thing that I didn't see tonight, and I feel unfair, and I apologize. Yeah, so I think this merits discussion. So I kind of feel like this is not a problem that's going to go away. This is going to be a developing area. This kind of like flying under the radar of the rental ordinance, where people are going to be finding a cheap rental and then renting it to their buddies so that they can all work a job is going to be more common than we probably think. And that's going to create a problem, or if there's just going to be a problem with commercial vehicles in the area. I think that it merits at least discussion, but if it's just a reinforcement issue that we didn't enforce the existing rules, and I don't know that we need to like spend the time on it. I do think it merits discussion. I also think that literally every suburb in the world has one of these ordinances that they enforce with almost without problem. And I'm a consumer lawyer who gets called once a month about somebody who is pissed off because they got sued by they got ticketed by, because they've had their food truck there for 6 months. It's like, well, your ordinance is changed. You don't take it out. Yeah. And so like, I just feel like this is something that's easily solvable or enforceable. And we just need to spend the time to sculpt this in the right way if we're going to do this.
Right, so I'll add to, yeah, again, kind of like Chris said, no rush. People can think about it or whatever, but I'll add it. It was a code issue because the code wasn't tight enough. They couldn't enforce these particular trucks. But I also think we need to, like, the whole point of a resident's complaint or concern is it opens your eyes to what could happen or that somebody else, if it happens to. So we tighten up the ordinance for the protection of the residents, not do anything because potentially someday somebody might own a company and then you might be mad if you can't park your car there. That doesn't make any sense. Like, we had an issue. It wasn't solvable because the code wasn't tight enough. So we tighten it up, and then that way the next person that has this issue doesn't have to go through what we're going through, and it can just be done. Now, but to not do anything because someday somebody might want a decal on a different car, it doesn't make any sense.
I also think it's getting kind of tossed in with the bunkhouse issue that's come up at, town council and building commission where people rent a house. And I think JD mentioned that, that people, they can sign a lease and there's something that says, and I haven't seen it yet, but he mentioned it at a meeting, there are 2 people per bedroom in Long Beach. So, I just, I think that I don't want to say that it's personal, and I can't say, I wasn't out there. I haven't seen video of people coming and going and trucks and people and noise and disruption. You can get 20 different stories from people. So I think that we just need to look at the ordinance and maybe just leave the narrative to the side, because we have no way of proving that anymore, that unless somebody was, videotaping, and I haven't seen it, and whether that has anything to do with the ordinance.
I mean, obviously it was a concern. Mark has a written report that they went out and looked and the trucks were there, but they couldn't remove them because of the axle wheel thing. So this is not a made up thing, Anita.
I didn't say it was made up.
You did. You said, let's not, unless there's video, I don't really know because I wasn't there.
Well, there were a lot of issues and instances that you talked about. I'm just saying then we need to just kind of concentrate on the ordinance.
Right.
And not look at the narrative surrounding it, because we can't verify the narrative.
Correct.
That's all I was saying, Kendra, not that it's made up. I just said we have to just look at the ordinance. And there is no urgency to it. So Seth, I'm sorry if you didn't see it. I'm just sorry. I'll bring copies next time, or just make sure I try and get things out earlier. So we'll just table it until next month, and people can look at anything unless someone has anything else to discuss. Are we all good with that? We'll look at it again next month.
That's good.
Okay, good. Thank you. And that brings us to public hearing. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak?
That's public comments.
Oh, wait, public hearing. Sorry about that. That's public comments. Public hearing. We have none. Public comments. I don't see anyone in the audience. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? Do we have anyone on Zoom? We do?
4 participants.
All right, we hear nothing. Closing matters. Our next meeting is July 15th at 7 o'clock here in the town hall. Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
What do I say here? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, everybody.